Hello. In the Crown of Aragon, 639 years ago, it was February 25th, 1387. My name is Jonathan Seyfried. I'm a PhD candidate in history at the University of New Mexico, and this is the Historian's Notebook, a podcast about how history gets made. Season 1 is titled Multcara Compagnona. We're looking at a document from each day of the first year of the reign of King Joan I of Aragon and Queen Violante de Bar. Let's begin today's document. Today's document is from the Secret Seal Register of Joan, and it is addressed to someone very clearly spelled out in an addressee line at the end of the letter. So the person's name is Pedro Tolza, and then following that name is his title, Advocato Fiscali Regni Valenciae. And also, I think it's the continuation of his title here after the word et Procuratori Fiscali Ipsum Regni. The procurator, the financial procurator of the same kingdom. Now that part's in Latin, but the letter itself is in Catalan. And so I can say that I can understand pretty much every word of this letter. I got a quick transcription from Gemini and then transferred that over, copy-pasted it into ChatGPT for the translation, and that sped things up. And I do think I could have done it myself. It just would have taken a whole lot longer. And in this initial run-through, I think it's a valid use of the AI chatbots to get a general sense of what is going on. And then I zoom in on particular phrases after doing a bit of a proofread. So I think that process is a good way to handle the time constraints that are associated with looking at this many documents. So Joan is writing to his financial head person in Valencia and starts out by saying that he has been sent information by the governor of Valencia. The governor of Valencia, I'm not quite sure who that is at this time. And earlier this month, we had a bunch of letters that were connected to James, the Bishop of Valencia, and the whole effort to get James to become a cardinal. So here we've got another position of authority. It's not easy for me to understand how the governor and the royal family member James the Bishop would power share exactly. I mean, on paper it's clear that James would be in charge of ecclesiastical authorities and the governor would be in charge of secular authorities. But, with the person who's in charge of the ecclesiastical authority also a member of the royal family, right? It's Joan's cousin. Well, first cousin once removed, but still, that's recognizably, it's not distant. It's a royal family member who's in charge of the church apparatus there in Valencia. And so we have to really think about how there's this blending of authority, and in the situation in Valencia, it really might be that the ecclesiastical leader, James, is got more of a leadership role than the governor. But I'm not sure because I don't know who the governor of Valencia is at this time. All right, so Joan has gotten some information from the governor of Valencia, and the information has to do with certain malfeasance. So there's some kind of judicial process being referred to here, and it's all vague, and really it's quite frustrating because there's usually at least some person's name or something to kind of like give me a clue, and I can maybe do some more research. But in this particular letter, it's all just referred to as things like the case or the process or the information, and we don't have any kind of hint about the specifics for what it is that Pedro Tolza is trying to remedy. But in the second to last line on folio 14V, we do have an interesting phrase, and it starts with the second to the last word, segons fur e bona rajo en tal manera. So segons according to fur. So FUR is an interesting word in this time and place. It basically is the law, but instead of seeing the word leyes, we see this word fur. The word fur is used usually in the context of the local statutes, almost like you could say the state law versus the federal law, if we're making an analogy to kind of the modern American system. The furs are often the laws that go way back and have emerged out of long traditions, and the furs in a particular city or province will be sort of accepted as that province joins in the larger state of the Crown of Aragon. So what Joan is referring to here is the local law that has sort of a much more long-standing status, kind of a tradition associated with it. And then he adds the phrase e bona rajo, and good reason or good justification. So what he's saying here is that Pedro Tolza, the procurator, the person in charge of the money or the royal money in Valencia, is going to find a way to solve these problems that the governor informed me about. And he's telling Pedro Tolza to do it. And you, Pedro Tolza, you should do this according to the local Valencia law, the fur, and then also according to good reason. So it seems to me that we've got a moment of governance of the kind of faraway territories that at first it seems pretty humdrum. It seems like there's nothing very radical going on. We just get a little snapshot of what it's like to have to direct people to solve problems in a way that just makes sense in a place that Joan probably never set foot in and never will. That's an interesting question. Did Joan ever visit Valencia? I'm not sure that he ever did. And so the running of the kingdom is sometimes just rubber stamping things, I guess, or just telling the person who's in charge to do the thing that they're in charge of anyway. It's really hard for me to see why this particular document is even necessary. Maybe it's something like just a way of saying to Pedro Tolza that he knows about the situation, that this is something that he's monitoring, so you'd better do a good job of solving the problem. And indeed, the last line before the dating clause is certificans vos cans en farets servi. So, certify, confirm that these deeds have been done. So Joan wants to be informed about the outcome here of whatever the heck is going on. I did a little bit of research trying to figure out, well, what is going on? It's not easy to find information about Pedro Tolza. There's not a lot in the secondary literature on him after just a little preliminary searching. And then I just did a quick browse through Thomas Bisson's book, A Short History of the Crown of Aragon, just to see if there was just anything that was happening in Valencia around 1387, the beginning of 1387, that might provide a clue into this. Nothing all that substantial happened that would kind of merit mention in the short history of the Crown of Aragon. So this is a case where really there's just not a lot of info about what's happening. And maybe we're going to get a clarifying letter somewhere else down the road, and this particular vague directive to Pedro Tolza will make sense. And once again, I said this yesterday, I'll say it again today, I am really hoping that these registers at one point become full text searchable, because then we can do a search for other letters that involve Pedro Tolza and maybe figure out just what is going on. I also looked around the other letters, and it seems like the other letters in the folios around this one in the register are not really about the same thing. They're about different places. So yeah, I'm kind of really coming up short with this particular one. And so maybe there's going to be another letter down the road that helps to figure it out. And so, gosh, what can I say? This is going to be a pretty brief episode here on the Historian's Notebook, because this is pretty much as much of a blind alleyway, as they say, as you can get into when you're working with these documents, where you get something that's super vague. The other secondary literature doesn't really turn up anything about it. So, yeah, pretty dissatisfying, but hey, that's our motto, right? Yeah. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Historian's Notebook, Season 1, Molt Cara Compagnona. If you are leaving with more questions than you arrived with, like what the heck is going on in Valencia with money troubles, or, like embezzlement, I don't even know. Well, if you've got questions like that, then I've done my job. Because there's that motto of the Historian's Notebook, dissatisfaction guaranteed. Yeah, really feeling it this time. Goodness. Visit the website to see an image of today's document and additional show notes. And listen again tomorrow to hear about the next day in the first year of the reign of King Joan I of Aragon and Queen Violante de Bar. In the meantime, take care.